So all the Torah Anytime and YouTube people, we're starting Parshas Bereishis, and should be our learning should be a schus for the those who are captured and injured in the war. And people ask me, well, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? The answer is what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to daven. We're supposed to learn Torah and do mitzvahs. That's what we're supposed to do. There's nothing we can do. People think that there's a magic button that you could push. We have to do what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to do. The Gemara says, that the Gemara says that what allowed them to stand in war was the Torah that was being learned. The Torah that's being learned, it fortifies. Every army, not everybody's on the front lines. They have an intelligence and they have cooks, and there are all sorts of people. We're the intelligence for the army. We have to learn Torah, and hopefully that'll be the schus that protects us. In any event, Bereishis bar Elokim et Hashemayim v'asar. So right off the bat, I'm going to tell you guys, I'm not going to speak about creation because we don't understand creation. No matter what at the end of the day, we're not going to understand how it happened. Can't understand how it happened because a concept of yesh mi'ayin, that there was nothing and there is something. That there was nothing and now there's something is beyond our comprehension. There's no such thing as nothingness. There's no such thing as nothingness. In whatever nothingness is, we can't beyond it. Even in a vacuum, there are molecules or particles or something floating around. Even when you speak, so a word comes out, the vapor goes up, and right, there's something. There's always something. Nothing in the world goes lost. The energy and the physical substances, none of it goes lost. What happens is there was absolute nothingness, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu created what's called yesh mi'ayin, something from nothing. And something from nothing, we do not understand what that is. And then the Torah itself, when it talks about how creation was, Vayomer Elokim, who was he speaking to? Vayomer, Hashem said. Who was he talking to that he had to say it? He wasn't talking to himself. Who was Hashem saying? What's Hashem saying? It means that he was thinking it, or whatever it is that he willed it. Whatever you ascribe to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we can't comprehend anyway. So I don't spend time on Bereishis on trying to figure out how creation works, because it doesn't, in any way, is no nafkamina. Right? It makes no difference. How it worked makes no difference. Either way, tomorrow morning we got to put on tefillin. So exactly how it happened doesn't make a difference. But what we need to do is take out the life lessons over. So Meir asked me right away, right on the first Rashi, Meir asked me. I wasn't going to bring it up, but Meir brought it up, so we'll talk about it. Rashi says, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak, there are those that say Rabbi Yitzchak is Rashi's father, by the way. He starts the first Rashi in Chumash in his tribute to his father. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, his name was Shlomo Yitzchaki. And what was Rashi's last name? The last name wasn't Goldbaum. Right? Rashi goes like Shlomo Yitzchaki. What's Yitzchaki? Shlomo, the son of Yitzchak. So there are those that say that this Amar Rabbi Yitzchak is his father. He starts off his first Rashi in Chumash is something his father told him. So he says, Amar, somebody once said, who is the first person who learned Gemara with Rashi? Who's the first person to ever learn? Rashi didn't have Rashi, right? When he learned Gemara, Rashi didn't have it. Who's the first person to learn Gemara with Rashi? His father. His father learned Gemara with Rashi. So he says, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Lo yitzarech la'atzchas ha'Torah ela me'achodesh hazeh. The Torah should have began with ha'chodesh hazeh in Parsha Shmos. She mitzvah rishona shenitztavu b'Yisrael, the first mitzvah that the Jewish people were commanded. Meaning that people look at the Torah as an instruction book. It's a book of rules. The word Torah comes from hora'ah. Hora'ah is moreh, teacher. Moreh is a teacher. Horah is instruction. Torah is horah. That's where Torah comes from. So it says the it should have started if it's a rule book. In other words, let's say you open up the Constitution of the United States. What would you expect the Constitution of the United States? In 1776 there was a war, and the English started up, and the Americans drove them out. There's a guy named George Washington who chopped down cherry trees, and I go through the whole history of them. What's it got to do with the law? Give me the laws over here. That's a constitution. It's supposed to be the laws. So it comes along the Torah. The Torah says, "Umatam pasach bebereishis." So why did it start with creation? Mishum, because of the pasuk that says, "Koach ma'asav higid la'amo lo seisem nachlas goyim." The strength of his actions, he told his people to give them the portion of the goyim. And like Meir pointed out, this is just so apropos. She'im yomru umos ha'amim liYisrael. If the nations say to the Jewish people, listimatem, You're bandits. Shekavashtem artzos shiva goyim. You conquered the lands of the 7 nations. What they call in Hebrew the kibush. The Arabs called the kibush, the captured lands. We've captured their land. So they say you captured the land of the 7 nations. The fact that America drove out the Indians and took over America, that nobody pays attention to. Yeah, but that was then. You know, for some reason that was okay. And they threw out the Mexicans and they threw out everybody else. That was fine. Haim omrim lahem. So the Jewish people could say back to the Goyim, Kol haaretz shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It all belongs to God. That's why it starts with Bereishis. God created, it's His. My ball, I decide the rules. Hu berav in asana asher yasher beinu. He created it and gave it to whoever He wanted. Birtzona nasadalem of birtzona natlamehem v'nasalanu. He gave it to them and then He took it away from them and gave it to us. That's our answer to the nation. So I saw one of Rav Yankele Galinsky, who's one of the contemporary, he was Nifter a couple of years ago. He asked the following question, and if we say this to them, so that's going to calm them down? We've been saying it for a long time, and it helps? Well, what's Rashi telling you over here? Well, if the Goyim say you're a bunch of thieves, so we can say back to them, Hashem created the world, He gave it to us. We've been saying that. Doesn't seem to help, does it? Right? So obviously, it could be there's going to be a point in history when it will help. Hopefully in the Messianic age that it will help. But here he says this is for us, not for them. It's what we have to realize we could say to them. We have to realize that we could say this to the Goyim, that God created the world and gave us the land, and therefore what? Therefore it saddles us with responsibility. It's our achrayus now. You're claiming the land is yours because there's a creator. The land is yours because God created the world? There's a creator? What else does the creator want from us? What else is the creator? Maybe we should we open the windows? Or I think we could open the windows instead of what, because I putting on the air conditioning. Just slide it open. This one over here, Shmuel.
Yeah, this one is open.
Huh? This one's open. Oh, that's not good. How was Yantif, Mayor? It's good? It's good. Your first Yantif married.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rosh Hashanah, everything. First, yeah, it's always the first. Thank you. So that's the lesson is for us. Okay. Now there's a medrash over here. I'm sure you know the medrash. So let's see what it says. What this is all about. What are the lessons? Bereishis bar Elokim and Shemaim v'Zaretz. Rashi, by the way, translates this not as in the beginning. Rashi does not translate as in the beginning. Rashi does say at the beginning of. That's how Rashi translated it. There's a very difference between in the beginning and at the beginning of creation. At the beginning of it, Rashi tells you it's not telling you the order of creation, but I told you I'm not going into it, so we won't go into it. But over here there's a medrash that says, why was the Torah created with why it starts with a base? Bereishis bara Elokim. Brias ha'olam starts with a base. So the Aleph, the medrash says the Aleph came to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and said, hey, why is, what happened to me? Aleph is the number 1. Why did you start with number 2? Okay, that's what the medrash says. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to the Aleph, I'm going to give you Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Anochi Hashem Elokecha is the 10 Commandments. 10 Commandments is going to start with an Aleph. What does that mean? What kind of answer is that? What's the answer? An Aleph is what do you call it? Aleph is, okay, you'll get the Anochi. So what does that mean? Obviously, a medrash isn't playing games with letters, right? The medrash is trying to teach us something. What's the medrash trying to teach us? So the answer is that there are 2 main events in history. There are 2 main events in history. There's the creation of the world, and there's the giving of the Torah. Which one was a bigger event? Which one was a bigger event? The bigger event is the giving of the Torah. The whole creation, that's Bereishis, Rashi brings down over here, the famous Chazal Bereishis. For the Torah that was called Bereishis, for the Torah, which is called Reishis, and for the Jewish people, which are called Reishis. That's the purpose of creation. Creation is a backdrop. And we're going to see even more. Something I saw Ravigdor Miller point out something I've never seen this before. I never even thought about it. A million times we've seen it and read it, and a million times I never thought about it. We're looking at the words. Somebody, I think I don't remember who said it. The same Bereishis that a 5-year-old child learns is the same Bereishis that the Vilna Gaon learned. Right, so hopefully when we learn it now, we don't learn it the same way as a 5. Hopefully we've progressed a little bit at least. That we learned it a little bit deeper. So there are 2 main events in the world. There's creation of the world, and there's the giving of the Torah. Which one was a more significant event? So most people would say the giving of the Torah is a significant event. right? No. That the creation is significant. No, the creation is not the significant. Creation is a significant event. But the most important event is the giving of the Torah. That's the whole point of it. You know, there's a big event. There's marriage. There's the wedding. And there's staying married. Right? Which one is a bigger event? Right? Which one's a bigger miracle? Which one? They're both miracles. Right? Which one's a bigger one? As Hashem has trouble. It says it's as difficult to match people up as the splitting of the sea. Right? What about keeping them together? There's a splitting of the sea for you. Which is what's the marriage? To get married is no big trick. To stay married is a trick. Right? What's the whole point of a wedding ceremony? People think, the wedding, and they plan the wedding, Don't plan the wedding, plan your marriage. Plan the wedding, what do you need? What's the difference? The napkins are going to be either pink or purple. What does it make a difference in the grand scheme of things? Does it really matter? If you serve schnitzel, if you serve meat, does it really matter in the grand scheme of things? Okay, it's a big event, it's a wonderful thing, it's a terrific thing. What's more important? That's only background. That's only the creation. The most important thing is what happens afterwards. That's the Torah. That's the Aleph. That's what the Medrash says. Now, this is what's remarkable. Take a look at the pasuk. Do you see anything unique in this? Bereishis bara Elokim es hashamayim ve'es haaretz, ve'haaretz ha'isa tohu v'vo. You see anything about that grab you? Bereishis bara Elokim es hashamayim ve'es haaretz, ve'haaretz ha'isa tohu v'vo. Anything about that grab you? It's like there's something here should grab. I mean, I'm telling you, I read this about over a bajillion times, and I never noticed it. What's bigger, gentlemen? Shemayim or Aretz?
Shemayim.
Shemayim. I mean, you can't compare. What's in Shemayim? You got how many trillions of stars? Each one is bigger than the earth. And the Shemayim is vast and it's endless and it's this and it's that and everything else. How big is the earth? I mean, at the end of the day, how big is the earth? It's not relatively, even in the planets. I don't know what they say the solar. We were always thought that there were nine planets in the solar system. I don't know if they've discovered a few more. They discovered a couple more. There's always a Pluto and a Saturn and a, what do you call it? I remember, by the way, which is the one with the rings around it? Was that Saturn? Oh, so Saturn was another one of the scientific. This was a joy. When I was growing up, there was speculation, how many rings are around Saturn? So it's a machlokas. It was either 3, 5, or 7. There was 3 rings, 5 rings, or 7 rings around Saturn. Then they finally managed, 20 years ago or 30 years ago, they sent up a satellite that got a look at Saturn. How many rings were there around Saturn? Thousands of rings. Which is more than 3, 5, or 7, by the way. Thousands of rings, right? Thousands of rings. You understand the nonsense that they talk nonsense about the what do you call it? But one thing we know is that the planets are massive, and there are bajillion planets. So there's a lack of balance over here. It's not symmetrical. It sounds like they're even. And then what happens? That's the last thing we hear about Shemayim. That's all. There's Shemayim. Okay. Finished with Shemayim. Then we go straight into Aretz. Is that interesting? So what's Shemayim for? What do you need Shemayim for? Shemayim is only there to make us understand the vastness of the Ribono Shel Olam. When a person looks up at the Shemayim, a person looks at the heavens, you get that feeling like, boy, I am so insignificant. It's a feeling I got the first time I was in Manhattan. Why are you laughing? I'm telling you. I was in Manhattan, I was getting nervous. We were driving through Manhattan, and I'm just looking at these massive buildings. Chicago also has a skyscraper, but it was different. Manhattan was different. Everything was just big, and I just felt little. Just when you start to feel good about yourself, take a walk in Manhattan, and you realize that you don't really count. It was depressing. Besides getting mugged. Right? It was besides getting mugged, it was depressing. That's a big place. You're looking at these buildings over here like, my goodness, one building is bigger than the next. Everything is big and huge. I'm not talking about the people on the street moving around, looks like a bunch of ants running around on the street. It was just massive, it was big. So Shemayim is there. What's Shemayim there? So we can look up at Shemayim and think, ooh, wow. And if there's a Shemayim and somebody created a Shemayim, so that gives us an idea how big the Ribono Shel Olam is. Big, I'm using human terms. vast that were beyond our comprehension. Can't even comprehend the 100. They're always worried about what's going on in space. They're always sending up as if they got everything worked out down here. Everything down here they got under control. Right? You can't open up a store in central San Francisco because you got to close because people are shoplifting and mugging you. And what do you call that? That's okay. But what's going on in the planets that they're worried about, sending people up to Jupiter. Because, you know, how can we live without knowing what's going on in Jupiter? That they're worried about. But worried about walking the streets where, hey, a long time no see, David. Welcome back. Walking the streets of an American city, that you can't do without getting mugged. That they're not worried. That that's okay, right? But what's going on in Jupiter, that they're worried about. So the first thing is just realize that's a Shemayim V'Eretz. Then what happens? Then the Torah talks about the Oretz. And then what happens? Then the focus changes. And where does it go to? It goes to man. Interesting. Then we don't find out about the Earth. There's no geological studies here that follow. We're going to talk about the Earth. Tell the creation of this, that, grass grew. That's it. The rest of the Torah, once you start with Adam, so then what happens after you start with Adam? Then it's all about man and woman and human beings. And then what happens? One more downgrade, upgrade, downgrade, whatever you call it. There's a Mabul, right, but what happens after man? After it talks about man in general, then what? Then it gets to man specific, which is Avram Avinu. That means that the whole point of creation is ultimately Klal Yisrael. People don't like to hear that. Nobody likes to hear that. Everything that happens in the world is for the Jewish people. If there's a tsunami in Indonesia, it's for Klal Yisrael to learn from it. People, they got whatever their averas were, whatever, they deserve the punishment, right? But it's meant, the Gemara says in Yevamis, it's for whatever happens in the world for us to learn from it, for Klal Yisrael. People don't like hearing that. People don't like that. People don't like to think, even though it's the same people who, oh, how could you say that? That same person got up in Kiddush last Friday night and said, Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim, who chose us from among all the nations. That same person was already bought into it. They said, Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim. So you do believe it. So everything that happens, but it's just a remarkable thing. I never noticed that. That's a Shemayim V'Eretz, but they're not even. And then V'Haaretz Eisa Tovavo. It's all about the land. Now I'll show you something else that I never noticed. Take a look at, where is it? If you look, Bereishis bara, look at the first letter of the next pasuk. Bereishis bara kemes hashamayim ve'esa aretz. Look at that. Ve'haaretz eisa tovavo. Look at the next pasuk. Vayomer Elokim Yihior. Look at the next one. Vayikra Elokim or Yom. Look at the next pasuk. Vayomer Elokim. Open randomly to any page in Chumash now. Open randomly to any page in Chumash. And you're going to see, look on any page. Here, I opened to page 242. Vayar Yosef. Vayikhu ha'anoshim. It could have, Vayiru ha'anoshim. Every single pasuk, it's unbelievable. It all starts with a Vav. Vayovei ha'ish. It doesn't have to say it that way. It could say in Hebrew, Ra'a Yosef. Lakach ha'ish. It doesn't have to say it. It's everywhere you turn, randomly you're going to see a tremendous high percentage of psukim, and if they aren't, then it's going to be the sentence that introduces that section of the Torah. And it's not every pasuk, obviously, but a very high percentage of psukim in the Torah begin with a vav. Why? What is the letter vav? What's the significance of a vav? What's the significance of the letter vav? What is a vav in Hebrew? V. What does v mean? V. If you say v.
It means continuity.
Ani. Oh, continuity is a perfect word. Very good. That means everywhere you look in Chumash, there's continuity. That means that this is all a plan. This is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plan all through history. Nothing is random and haphazard. The only thing that's random and haphazard is my living room when the grandchildren are over. And you take a look at my living room, then it looks like random and haphazard. That's random and haphazard. But the Torah, the Bria isn't random. There's nothing random. Nothing that happens is random and haphazard. I mean, here we are sitting in a situation over here where everybody's asking what went wrong and how could they have come through it and what started the war and everything else. But at the end of the day, this is part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plan, whether we like it or not. What we're supposed to learn from it, we'll see. What we're supposed to do about it, so that way, okay, that's something else. But that it's all part of a plan that's running through history, leading to a point. And everywhere you look in the Torah is va. It's unbelievable. Vayihi bayom hashlishi. right? Ve'es kol chela, ve'es kol, in the beginning of a sentence, you know, and in English, when you talk, you never start a sentence with and. Didn't they teach you that in English classes? Never, right? Didn't they teach you that? You don't start with and or but. I do. Who said they can't make the rules? The rules are made to be considered. I considered it, right? I consider it a foolish rule. I mean, you talk, so once in a while you start with an and, once in a while you start with a but. Look at the Torah constantly. That's the lesson over here. Number one. Number two, there's a Rashi here. This is the real boomer here. Rashi says on the left column, tohu vavohu. David, you got a chumash? Yeah. Yes. Okay. And tohu vavohu, left column, about 8 lines from the top. Tohu vavohu. How does the article translate tohu vavohu? And the earth was, when the earth was astonishingly empty. Now he's calling it astonishingly empty. You know where the article is getting that from? He's getting that from Rashi. ArtScroll is getting that translated, because look at how Rashi says it. Tohu vavohu. Rashi says, Tohu lashon tama vishimamon. It's an expression of astonishing emptiness. That's really what it translates it. That's where the ArtScroll got it from. She'adam tohe umishtomim al bohu sheba. A person is amazed, astonished at the emptiness. It is so empty, you're astonished. You can't believe how empty it is. What does that mean? So again, from a creation point of view, I can't tell you, because I don't know. I don't know. We don't understand. But from a life lesson point of view, when was the what do you call it, the financial crash in the United States? What was it? 2007, 2008? What was it? 2008 was the financial crash. So there was a wealthy man, a frum Jew in New York. He came to a Rav, a businessman who had been wealthy, and he said to his Rav, after he got cleaned out, and he said to his Rav, all I have left to show for the last 25 years is my 45 minutes a day of daf yomi. But that's all I have left to show. I mean, you know, you can live 70, 80, 90 years and be totally empty. You waste a life, a person, and you're astonished. How did you manage to live so long and do so little? How could you have lived so long and accomplished so little? And people who live, I heard once about a guy who was an expert at French opera. Somebody pointed him out to me. See that guy over there? It's an older man. He said, he's an expert on French opera. Can you imagine after 120 years, a guy comes up to heaven and they say to him, okay, so what'd you accomplish in life? You know, bonjour, monsieur. And he starts singing in French. That's what you accomplished in your life? I remember walking in your downtown Yerushalayim once. I was walking down there, I saw a falafel shop. It's called Melech HaFalafel, the king of falafels. Right? I remember thinking, I wasn't, you know, I'm not a great, you know, I got my own issues to worry about, but, you know, I'd hate to come up after 20 years, after 120 years, and Hashem says, so what'd you, I was the king. Really? England, Belgium, Sweden, they all have monarchies today, right? No. Jerusalem. Really? King David? No, that's somebody else. I was the king of the falafels. Melech falafel. But with Trina. With Trina, you know, so don't knock it. You know, there's Trina. And my sidekick pizza. You know, he was the vice. Yeah, honestly. You spent a lifetime, that's why you're king of falafel. I don't mind making business, open a business, call yourself Melech falafel. But that's what you see yourself. That's what you accomplish in life. I'll tell you an interesting Maisa. You've heard of Rabbi Chanan Wasserman? Rabbi Chanan Wasserman he wrote the Kobitz Igros, and he was the Rosh Yeshiva, and a famous Rabbi Chanan. He was killed by the who was it? The Ukrainian national, the Ukrainians. Who killed Rabbi Chanan Wasserman? The Ukrainian. It was the Ukrainian nationals, whatever it was. He was taken out and executed. He was in America fundraising for his yeshiva, the Baranovich yeshiva. And when the war started sometime in 1940, he went back. They told him, don't go back. And he said, no, I have to go back to be with my yeshiva. I have responsibility for them. And he died. They were taken out, they took him to the who was it? Was it the Ukrainians or the Romanians? I forgot who it was. Whatever it was, none of them were any good. And they executed. So Hunter Wasserman, who was fundraising in the United States, and he went to somewhere in New York, and there was a Jew from Baranovich who had come to America. He assimilated, came to America, became completely secular, but he opened up, he had a big clothing factory. We're talking about 1940. So Rabbi Chanan Wasserman comes to see this man, and he's collecting for his yeshiva. He spent about a year and a half, I think, in America fundraising for the yeshiva. And he goes up to this guy's office, and they schmooze for a little bit. They reminisce a little bit about Baranovich, the old country. And finally, the guy says to Rabbi Chanan, he says to him, okay, Rabbi Wasserman, what did you come here for? So Rabbi Chanan turns to the guy, he's wearing, a frock, and he's missing a button on the back of his frock. He says, I came here to have a button sewed onto my frock. So the guy chuckles. He says, okay, Rabbi Wasserman, what did you come here for? Rabbi Chanan was known to never smile. He was very, very rarely smiled, a very, very stern face. He said, I came to have a button sewn onto my frock. So the guy said, oh, the rabbi thinks he's a wise guy. I'll show him. He says, okay, Rabbi, come with me. And he takes him down to the factory area. He's got 200 workers in his factory. He says, hey, Ralphie, come here. Sew a button on the rabbi's frock. He wants to show Rabbi Chanan what he's got down there, it's his factory. So the guy takes the frock and he takes 10 minutes, he sews on the button, he gives it back. Rabbi Chanan says to him, thank you very much. He turns around and he leaves. The next morning he gets a phone call. 7 o'clock in the morning, he gets a phone call where he's staying. Rabbi Chanan Wasserman, where he's staying, gets a phone call. The guy's hollering at him on the phone. He says, Rabbi Wasserman, you cost me a night's sleep. I lost an entire night's sleep because of you. What did you come here for? Now you get down here and tell me what you came here for. You didn't come here to have a button sewn onto your frock. So Chanan goes back down to the office, and the guy says to him, now what did you come here for? So Chanan says, I understand, what's your problem? He says, you didn't come here from Baranovich to have a button sewed onto your frock. So Chanan says, I understand. From Baranovich to the United States, it's a couple thousand miles. And for me to travel a couple thousand miles to have a button sewed on my frock, that you don't understand. Yet your neshama came down through the 7 heavens, down to earth, and it's a lot farther from the heavens down to earth than it is from Baranovich to Manhattan. And you came down here to sew buttons on coats and make clothing? That's what you came for? Me you have a problem with? The guy changed him. He became a supporter of the yeshiva from that little musar she was from Chanan Wasserman. A person came to this world. That's what Rashi says. A person can live. I mean, that's what you accomplished. There's a guy, documented? There was a guy who worked on the Rubik's Cube. I remember when I saw the Rubik's Cube the first time, I took one look at the Rubik's Cube. I played around with it a little bit. I don't think I've ever touched it again. I've touched it, but I've never tried working out the Rubik's Cube. It's too hard. That's too difficult. The Rubik's Cube, go sit there and think, what chance? Have we got a chance? Get some kid who knows how to do it in about 3 minutes. Some kid who knows like that. You can't. You got a guy worked on the Rubik's Cube for 26 years. His wife said he didn't. He brought it to the table. He brought it to work with him. He messed up their marriage. He messed up everything. Finally, after 26 years, he got the Rubik's Cube. That's what they spent 26 years figuring out the Rubik's Cube. What a productive use of a lifetime, right? That's what Rashi say. Person is mishtomim from the tov avo sheba. Okay, take a look at Pasuk Gimel. Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or. Yehi Or. Again, it's so blatantly obvious till somebody points it. It's so blatantly obvious. How did I manage to miss it for so long? What is the significance? The first thing it's created is light. What's like? Okay. I mean, why is the Torah telling us this? They're both saying, what's the Torah telling us this for? What difference does it make in my life? What the first thing is that was created? What does creation matter to me? Say, Bereishis bara Elokim es hakol. Hashem created everything. Okay, good. Now let's move on. Let's start flooding people, right? Let's start. Let's start eating fruit. And let's get involved with the snake. What do I care? What's the nafkamina? So it can't be that the Torah just said it because the Torah we had to fill some space over here. Make sure the big blue book is the right size. Why did the Torah say by Hior? So again, this is telling you the whole purpose of creation. Again, that's I told you. I'm not interested in how. I'm interested in what does it matter to me. What does light do, John? What do you do with light?
You illuminate.
You illuminate. Ooh, it's a big word. Sounds like something out of a Pirchei Miami song, right? What do you call it? What light you illuminate? Okay, let's bring it down to our terms. What does light help you do?
It helps you navigate.
Navigate, my goodness, I'll tell you. It sounds like that we're playing Jeopardy over here. It helps you to see. That's the word that we're looking for, John. Yes, we navigate, we illuminate, but we see, right? When somebody tells you something and you realize what they're saying, you say, oh, I navigate. No, you usually say, oh, I see. By the way, the reason I'm laughing is only because at home right now the refrigerator man, repairman is supposed to be coming because the refrigerator's on the blink. So this may set me back a couple of grand. So I'm trying to stay upbeat among all our other problems. So and by the way, my daughter tells me that her cabinet broke in her room over Yontif, so she needs a new cabinet. So I'm in a great mood. We're off to a great start here, besides all our other issues. So what do you call it? Vayihi Or means Hashem created light. The first thing it tells us they created light. It doesn't say that he created the heavens and the earth. It says it was at the beginning of the creation of Bereishis, Baruchim, and Shemayim v'Haaretz, but it doesn't say Vayihi Shemayim v'Haaretz. So that depends how you understand Shemayim v'Haaretz. But the first time it says God created Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or. Let there be light. Why? Because light allows us to see. And the purpose of creation, to see the Ribono Shel Olam. That's the whole purpose of creation. Let there be light so that we see and recognize HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The purpose of a world is that the world, we should be able to look at a world and say, see, there's a world, there's a God, and recognize God. And our whole life is meant to be that we recognize HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and our whole life is meant to be that we thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Modi manachnu lach, we say in Shemona Esrei, we say Modi manachnu lach, right? Modim anachnu lach. Stop on that word modim and think what I got to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for. Everybody's got something. Everybody's got complaints. Everybody got things that they're not happy with. What about what you are happy with? Modim anachnu lach. We're grateful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Even more than that, you know what I realized this year? Again, something that I've said. I can make a calculation for you. How many times I said it? Let's put it this way: 3. I say it about 1,000 times a year. So I've said this over 50,000 times in my life. And I finally realized it this year. Where were you? We just finished Yom Kippur. What's the last thing, the very last thing we do on Yom Kippur at Ne'ilah is what?
Shofar.
Shofar's after the Ne'ilah. What's the last thing? The last thing we do. Hashem Hu Elokim, right? 7 times. We pay Shema Yisrael once, Baruch Shem 3 times, and then Hashem Hu Elokim 7 times. And at that moment, how do you feel? Besides hungry. How do you feel? At that moment. That's the pinnacle of the year, right? That moment is when we're ready to promise Hashem everything. That's the moment, it's the culmination of a process that began 40 days early on Rosh Chodesh Elul. Hashem Hu Elokim, and the whole shul is rocking from Hashem Hu Elokim. Then they blow the shofar. Then they daven Marv, which takes less time than saying Hashem Hu Elokim, right? Takes less time than the shofar. I was a little kid. I think I was about 10 years old. We had the break on Yom Kippur. I was walking back to shul with my older brother. So I said to him, what's the schedule this afternoon when we get back to shul? He says, well, there's going to be, Mincha is going to take about an hour, then Nilo is going to be an hour, then Tchiyat Shofar is about 10 seconds, and Ma'ariv is less. I still remember my brother saying that to me. And there was one guy in our shul who davened Ma'ariv on Motzei Yom Kippur every year. This guy was our idol. This guy was somebody we looked up to. This guy, he was greased lightning, but he said every word. Yeah, we were, as kids, we were just like, you could hear the guy. Wasn't much longer than that, but you heard every word. He wasn't to mumble. I can mumble too. This guy was good. This guy was good. You heard every word, right? So he was hungry. So what do you call it? I noticed this year when you say Aleinu, right at the end of the first paragraph, it says, V'yadata hayom v'ashavos elavavecha ki Hashem hu ha'elokim. So we say it on Yom Kippur, we're all worked up. On Aleinu, we don't even realize we said it. People zip through Aleinu. You could say Hashem Hu Elokim every day, 3 times a day. You could say Hashem Hu Elokim. And you're allowed to stop for a second and think about what we're saying. Hashem Hu Elokim. You can say it in Aleinu L'Shabbat. Not loud. Don't bother the people around you when you're yelling it. But you can say Hashem Hu Elokim. Say it every day. That's the purpose of creation. That's light. The whole point of Vayhi Or. Hashem says Vayhi Or, let there be light. Why? If they're light, because they're light, you can see. And then a person could look everywhere in creation. If there's a world and there are trees, the famous, the guy who came to Rabbi Akiva, one of the Kofrim, he came to Rabbi Akiva and said, who created the world? He said, God did. He said, prove it. Rabbi Akiva said, who made your sweater? He said, the tailor did, the weaver did. Rabbi Akiva said, prove it. So the guy says, if there's a sweater, then obviously a weaver made it. Rabbi Akiva said, if there's a world, then obviously a God created it. And that world is infinitely more complex than a Chevrolet, the automobile. And if you leave all the parts of a Chevrolet automobile out in the desert, and you left them there for a couple of billion years, they still wouldn't not blow into shape and become a Chevrolet. And even more than that, if you were walking through a desert and you saw something as simple as this cup lying in a desert, you would automatically assume that a human being made it. Molecules and particles didn't fall together and suddenly make a cup. It was an Israeli company, right, with a high quality cup. The ones that you find in the desert might come out better after a couple of million years. But at the end of the day, you take a look at it and say that's a human being designed it, not a what do you call it. That's how a person looks at it. That's what the Torah is teaching us. Okay, one more point, very quickly. Yeah, all right, we'll call it a day. We'll continue tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem. All right.